if you are trying to quote, save up your calories for later in the day, girlfriend, that's going to backfire. And that is going to lead to irregularities in your blood sugar. That's going to lead to increased cravings. That's going to lead to unsteady energy levels. And it's ultimately, for most women, it causes them to eat more over the rest of the day. Welcome to the Mind and My Wellness podcast, your podcast for all things macros, movement, mindset, and everything in between. Hello, my lovely friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Mind of My Wellness podcast. And I cannot believe that summer is so quickly approaching. You might also already feel like it is summer where you live. So you might be like, well, we are in summer already. Here in San Diego, unless you know San Diego and you know what to expect, May and June are not the months that you want to come to San Diego. We have May gray and we have June gloom, and it does not feel like summer until July, which is crazy. But then I can't really complain because we have summer most of the year. So here I am, just really looking forward to my trip to Hawaii, which, as I'm recording this, we leave on Sunday for our baby moon in Maui. I'm so excited, especially because we have been in the thick of like that gray, foggy weather here in San Diego. So I'm really excited to escape for 6 days, get to Hawaii, enjoy some relaxation time, and then, of course, come back to the gray. So when this episode is out, I should already be back. Yeah, I'll be back already. I thought, because I get so many questions about how to navigate summer in particular with vacations, with events, we have barbecues, we have all of the summer holidays. How do you navigate those times and summer in general when a lot of us are just a lot more busy and out and about and social? How can you navigate this time, this season of the year, without sacrificing your health goals? So today I am going to break down 7 tips to help you. And these are the exact tips that I will be using while I go on my vacation to Hawaii, while I navigate summer. And I'm not currently tracking, obviously. I'll track here and there just to make sure that I'm getting enough protein in, but I don't have like a strict goal in mind as I'm moving through pregnancy. I'm using the framework of my pregnancy macros for mama guide, which, spoiler alert, is coming out very, very soon for any expecting moms or postpartum moms who are looking for a little bit of support with their nutrition and body goals postpartum and throughout pregnancy. But that's really what I'm focusing on throughout my pregnancy. But these tips are the tips that I use every single year throughout summer, throughout vacations. And so I want to share these with you because they're very simple tips that don't take a lot of effort, but can make a huge impact for you. So we'll dive into those tips to help you navigate through your summer, enjoying those vacations, enjoying those events, and more without worrying about sacrificing your health goals. Whether that goal is fat loss, whether that goal is body recomposition, whether that goal is simply just finding consistency and feeling good with your nutritional habits. I know from past experience and working with a lot of women that the summer can be a very challenging time when it comes to food because maybe it's bathing suit weather and we want to look good and feel good in our bodies in our bathing suits. And so this is where some of those negative eating patterns can kind of arise and come up, especially when you have a history, and at no fault of anybody's, this is dieting culture, but of having this restrictive mindset and having this, try not to eat before a trip and doing all these different techniques that truly just do not work in the long run and can actually backfire. And so without further ado, let's dive into my 7 tips that are going to help you navigate your summer. So tip number 1. If you are strictly tracking, if you are let's say you're in a deficit, or maybe you're at maintenance, but you are being very consistent and you're being very diligent with your tracking, I highly recommend pre-logging out your day to the best of your ability ahead of time. And you can use things like placeholders. So let's say, for example, you are going to a barbecue. Maybe it's 4th of July and you know that you're going to be out maybe lunch and dinner of that day. Sometimes it's just one meal. Maybe it's a full day where it's multiple meals you don't have a lot of control over. Simply put, for each and every one of these tips, control what you can control. Whatever you can't control, just do your best to navigate with these tips. So with tip number 1, pre-log as best you can. And I said placeholders because you can use placeholders in your food tracking app. If you're using MyFitnessPal or Macros Plus, whatever app you're using, you can search for carb gram, fat gram, or protein gram, and then put a placeholder gram amount there as just that, a placeholder, and kind of use that to make your informed decisions throughout whatever meal it is that you're eating out or maybe have a little less control over. And then going back to what I said, control what you can control. So let's say for that example, you're gone lunch and dinner. Well, you can control breakfast. So what are you going to do for breakfast? You're going to build a high protein, very well balanced breakfast, maybe being a little bit more conservative with the amount of fats or carbohydrates in that, depending on what the rest of your day might look like, and take that into account. So if you are tracking diligently, make sure that you are pre-logging to the best of your ability. And by pre-logging, I mean mapping out your day ahead of time in your food tracking app, controlling what you can control, and then using things like the placeholders to guesstimate the macros per the other meals that you plan to have that day. It won't be perfect, but at least it'll give you a gauge of, okay, I need to get this amount of protein in, these amount of carbs, this amount of fat in each of these meals, and can be a helpful hand in terms of, okay, great, I have my macro knowledge down. I know how many, or I know that this food is made up of more fats and protein than carbohydrates. And you can kind of start to use that to play Tetris without actually tracking. Of course, you can always go in and loosely track things as well. It's a holiday and you want to take a day off of tracking, then make sure that you are doing the best that you can to work within the confines that you set with those placeholders. Another tip for this tip number 1, so like a sub tip for it, is if you're going out to eat. So let's say you're on vacation and you're going to a restaurant, or you're just going out to eat on, any old Friday night, try to look up the menu ahead of time. And if you can look up the menu ahead of time, then take a look at what the different options are. What is it that you want? And what are maybe some things that you can tweak to that meal if you want to? Not saying you have to, but if you want to make some tweaks, you can kind of get a sense of what that meal is going to look like. And then what I recommend doing is track that meal in your food tracking app first. Then build your day around it. Because again, you can control what you can control. So if you can guesstimate that dinner, then plug that into your fitness app, your food tracking app, and then plan your day around that. So to summarize, tip number 1, again, try as best you can to pre-log if you are actively tracking. Now, if you're not actively tracking, you can still use some of these techniques, but this is really for somebody who is maybe in a deficit over summer. They want to get in, they want to get out, they want to see their best results. Then I would say try to pre-log as best you can. Now, if you have one day that you don't log your food in a deficit, you're probably going to be fine. But if you are being very diligent and consistent and adherent to your plan, take this approach and look up those menus ahead of time, add in placeholders, and then pre-log out your day, controlling the meals that you have control over, and then guesstimating those meals that you don't. Now, tip number 2 is front load your protein if you'll be out later in the day. So I already kind of incorporated this tip into tip number 1, but more often than not, protein is extremely challenging to get if we're out and about and really not thinking about the foods that we're eating. Especially when I think about summer, I'm thinking about like barbecues and things like that. And there can be great protein sources at them, but there's also a lot of other foods that are primarily carbs and fats. So if we can control our breakfast and nothing else throughout the day, make sure that you are front loading that protein early and building a high protein breakfast. Now, this is not simply just to hit a protein goal. There is more to it than that. This is because protein in and of itself increases your satiety. It helps with those feelings of fullness. It helps with blood sugar regulation so that you can navigate the rest of your day without those food cravings, without the rises and falls in energy levels. It's really going to set the stage for the rest of your day and help you make better decisions when it comes to your food choices, because you're not coming from a place of irregulated blood sugar where you're having these cravings, you're constantly hungry. Making sure that you're front loading that protein is really going to help with that steady energy and satiety, the feeling of fullness, and those cravings throughout the day. So if we can do that from the get-go, we're really setting ourselves up to make smarter choices throughout the day. Now, number 3 is to remember to stay hydrated. It can be very challenging for some to remember to drink water, especially if you're out at a pool or you're out at an event and maybe there are alcoholic beverages involved. That is very dehydrating in and of itself. So making sure that you are hydrating, this also will help with that feeling of satiety, fullness, and it's going to help with your digestion, which if you do have a specific goal like fat loss or even body recomposition during this time, during summer, hydration is going to be key. You need to be properly hydrated in order for your body to function optimally. So making sure that you are maybe getting up and drinking, a glass of water first thing in the morning, because again, usually first thing in the morning, that's the time that we can control. So doing what you can to set the stage for the day and really building those habits into your lifestyle. And then throughout the day, maybe that's taking a water bottle with you wherever you're going. I always have my water with me in the car if I'm traveling, or if you're going to an event, if you're on vacation, just making sure that you are asking for water, you're filling up a traveling water bottle, whatever that looks like, stay hydrated, because this is such a simple little hack, but it makes the world of a difference. And I think this is one that a lot of people will just overlook because it's like, oh yeah, I hear this all the time. But if you hear it all the time because it's so true and so effective and your body needs it to function optimally, that's what's going to help with your end results. So tip number 3, make sure that you are properly hydrated. If you're thinking, okay, well, what's a good goal to have? Anywhere from 80 to 100 or more ounces of water a day is a really great goal to have. If it's hotter, if you're exerting any more energy, maybe you're sweating, you're going to want more than that. So making sure that you're taking that into account, you're taking your activity into account as well. Moving on to tip number 4. We talked about protein a lot already for a good reason. And again, it's because of that satiety, that feeling of fullness, the blood sugar regulation that comes from protein. But if you've listened to any of my past episodes as well, I have a full episode on how protein itself can actually help you burn more calories at rest because it has a higher thermic effect. Now, that's not really the reason I put it here as point number 4. There's other reasons that I'm going to dive into it. But if you need like an extra push as to why you should really build your meals around a protein source, maybe go back and listen to that episode. And it's really diving into how when we're prioritizing protein, it has this higher thermic effect, meaning it burns more calories through the digestive process than carbohydrates and fats do. So we can really use our food choices to our advantage. So for tip number 4, when you're out and about, make sure that you're building meals as best as you can around a protein source. Again, sometimes there is a lot that's out of our control, especially at events, at traveling, and all of that over summer. So if we can identify the protein sources that are being served, that are at our fingertips and that are an option for us, focus on making that the center of your plate and then building your meal around that plate or around that protein so that you are really making sure you are prioritizing protein. Now, it's okay if you don't know exactly how much protein that is, but pay attention to making sure that you are centering those meals around a protein source to the best of your ability. Now, sometimes there's meals that have protein, but they're also, combined with carbs and fat. That's okay. But really focus on making sure that you are getting protein in at every single meal and or snack that you are having, because again, that's going to help with your blood sugar regulation and help to prevent you from overeating in the long run. So tip number 4, when you're out, build those meals around protein sources whenever you can. You have control over that. You can identify what those foods are that have protein, especially if you are somebody who has really dove into the foundations of macros and really understood what foods are made up of. It should be very simple for you to start to identify those foods. And if you don't know what foods are made up of what, I highly recommend you check out my free training, 3 Steps to Transform Your Body with Macros. It starts to break this down for you. I'll link it down in the show notes for you, but you can also go to mindedbymacros.com/masterclass and sign up for free. But this is really going to help you identify those foods and the macros in them so that you can start to think about how you're building your plates, even when you don't have control over the meals that you are eating. Tip number 5. Never, ever, ever go into an event, a holiday event, a vacation hungry or starving, because this is where we can experience blood sugar imbalances. And this is also where our hunger cues can be completely turned off. And it's not helpful to us whatsoever. So if you're thinking, oh, I just won't eat breakfast at all because I want to save up, if you're watching this on YouTube, which hint, hint, if you didn't know, all of my episodes are now on YouTube. You can watch me. Sometimes Miss Mila Doodle is in the back as well. You can't really see her right now because she's right underneath me, but I'm using air quotes right now. If you are trying to quote, save up your calories for later in the day, girlfriend, that's going to backfire. And that is going to lead to irregularities in your blood sugar. That's going to lead to increased cravings. That's going to lead to unsteady energy levels. And it's ultimately, for most women, it causes them to eat more over the rest of the day. And sometimes you don't even realize it, especially if you're just snacking here and there. So what I recommend doing is going back up to that tip number 2, which is front loading your protein at the beginning of the day and making sure that you are building a very well-balanced protein forward meal. That's going to help you really balance out that blood sugar and your cravings and energy levels throughout the day. So do not skip meals. Do not try to save up calories for later in the day, but instead be smart about how you're fueling. Remember, everything we're doing for an optimal metabolism. We want to make sure that we are regulating and optimizing it at all times to the best of our ability. And these tips are going to help you do that. So really try not to skip meals, to save up calories, or enter a specific event or dinner or whatever starving, because that will backfire. So plan ahead, make sure that even if it's eating a beef jerky stick or a Greek yogurt cup or string cheese, something that has a little bit of protein before you go to the event, that can be super helpful as well. Tip number 6. Don't forget, my friends, that alcohol counts, okay? This one is huge for a lot of women who do partake in drinking alcohol, because oftentimes we don't really consider it to be taking up a lot of our calories. And the truth is that alcohol in and of itself, it is going to add up over time. So a couple tips I have for alcohol. Make sure that if you are drinking, drink water between. Again, this is going to help with the other tip in terms of staying hydrated, but drink water between your drinks, because that will actually get you to slow down a little bit. And it's also going to help you be a little bit more mindful with the drinks that you're having, with the amount of drinks that you're having. You can also swap any of your drinks for a fun sparkling water mocktail. This is my go-to. So I love using a sparkling water. Sometimes I'll get like a flavored sparkling water, but it's 0 calories. And you can even put that with alcohol as well, if you'd like. I like to pair it with an element packet, with an electrolyte packet, and it tastes like a mocktail. It is so good. And I'll pair it with ice, and that is what I'll have when I'm out and about. So you can always swap things as well. And maybe that's between drinks. Maybe it's like you want a drink, but then you have like a sparkling water mocktail in between those drinks. Or maybe you choose, okay, I'm having one drink and then I'm going to have, water and a mocktail after. But you can also use that approach for alcohol as well to cut down on the calories in whatever you're mixing your alcohol with, because that will add up, which leads me to my next point within this tip, which is opt for a lower calorie drink option. So all alcohols will have calories. If you are looking at a nutrition label, this is where it can get really sneaky. If you're looking at a nutrition label on, let's say, a 100 calorie seltzer can, it might show you that there are 0 calories or 0 carbohydrates, 0 fat, 0 protein in it, but there's 100 calories in it. So if you know how to do macro math, macros add up to calories. So how the heck can we have 0 carbs, 0 fat, 0 protein, but still have 100 calories? I bet you've never thought about that, have you? The truth is that alcohol is the 4th macronutrient. However, there is no nutritional value in it, so it is not reported. That is why we always want to count alcohol towards a carb and or fat when we are tracking our alcohol. Now, there's a couple different ways you can do this. There used to be an app called the WAG Alc Calc. I think you can still get to it on desktop, but unfortunately the mobile apps, they don't use it anymore. This can be a great option, but you can even just Google how to count alcohol towards your macros. I have a full video walkthrough of that inside my macro tracking and logging mini course, which breaks down a bunch of ways to track different things like eating out and tracking alcohol and all of that. But make sure that you are accounting for alcohol. If you're seeing that there are 0 macros in that drink, that's not necessarily true because we're counting overall calories as well. So we want to account that alcohol towards carbs and or fat when we are drinking. And the reason we don't count it towards protein is because we really want to make sure we're prioritizing our protein for our overall goals. So you can kind of diversify it between carbs and fat. So alcohol does count. Make sure not to be tricked by those nutrition labels. And remember that they do, in fact, carry calories, which over time, if you're having 4 drinks in a given day, but they're 100 calorie seltzers, that's 400 calories taken out of your food allocation. I don't know about you, but I love to eat my calories. So the last little tidbit I have under the alcohol tip is to make sure that you are tracking and pre-logging your drinks, especially if you have a tight goal. So by doing this, you can then see very clearly, okay, I can allocate 1 or 2 drinks in my day and build my day around those, and I'll be okay. Great. Then you can enjoy those drinks. Then you can, have the 1, 2, whatever drinks you have and still enjoy the food that you want. But if you do not pre-log your drinks or if you do not track your drinks, more often than not, what happens is we can consume food and then we don't count in those drinks. And that puts us over brings us out of our deficit or puts us over our maintenance into a surplus. And so this is where weight gain can occur or a lack of progress in a deficit can occur. So make sure to pre-log those drinks 9 out of 10 times when I work with women in either my one-on-one coaching program or inside of my courses. They are so shocked at how, oh, wow, okay, these drinks are actually pulling me out of achieving my goals. And so it's not to say that you can't achieve your goals while drinking. Just remember that those calories do count. And the last thing that I will say here is that with your drinks, make sure that you are prioritizing your food, your whole food macronutrients. You're putting your drinks in that 20% category, and you're not taking a full day just incorporating a bunch of drinks into it and barely eating. We want to make sure that most of your day is coming from those nutrient-dense whole foods. And if you are incorporating those drinks, you're doing that mindfully, especially if you have a very strict goal at hand. Okay. Moving on to our final tip. Tip number 7, be mindful. And what the heck does that mean? Well, I have 2 things that I want you to be mindful of. Number 1 is, are you hungry when you're eating? So often when we are out and about and at events and, barbecues and all of these different things over summer, we can mindlessly eat. We kind of lose track of how much we've eaten, what we are even eating. And so a tip I have for you here is to build a plate whenever you can. So if you're at a barbecue, if you're at an event, if there is a table where there's food that you're kind of just grabbing at, build a plate so you can eyeball portion sizes. And then make sure that you're tapping in with yourself. Are you actually hungry when you're eating? Or are you eating just because everyone else is eating? Are you eating because you're nervous in this situation? Are you eating because you're bored? Are you eating because you just see everyone else eating and you feel like that's what you should be doing? Make sure that you are being mindful when you're hungry and when you're not hungry. And then if you're not hungry, but you're feeling the urge to eat because it's an event that other people are eating at or whatnot, that's when I would grab a sparkling water or something else to have in my hand to sip on. And that's going to help you with your hydration. So that is one piece of this. And then the other thing to be mindful of, the second thing to be mindful is, are you multitasking? Are you talking? Are you socializing while you're eating? If you are, slow down. Just pay attention. And again, tap into those hunger cues. So often it's very easy for us to lose sight of our hunger cues because we kind of forget how to tap into them, especially if we're so used to diet culture where we try to ignore our hunger cues and suppress our appetite. These hunger cues are here to help you. They're here to tell you when you're hungry and when you're not hungry. And when we can use macros, when we can build well-balanced blood sugar regulating meals and snacks and plates, this is going to really help us tap in to efficiently those hunger cues. So if you are multitasking, if you're socializing, just pay attention to that and then go back and tap into that hunger cue and say, okay, am I being present when I'm eating or am I just mindlessly eating right now? And if you're mindlessly eating, just check in. Am I actually hungry? Am I enjoying this fully? Or am I not even remembering or not even realizing that I'm eating right now? And if that's the case, take a little moment to assess, maybe get some water, and then focus on the conversation or whatever it is that you're doing without the food, unless it is that you are hungry. If those hunger cues are telling you, yes, you're hungry, by all means, keep eating, but pay attention to those things. So being mindful can be very challenging when we're navigating summer situations, but if you can prioritize just checking in with yourself here and there, it can make a world of a difference. Okay, my friends. So to quickly summarize the 7 tips that I'm leaving you with to help you navigate your summer so that you can enjoy those vacations, the events, and more without really sacrificing your health goals. Number 1 is if you are strictly tracking, if you have a very diligent goal at hand, make sure that you are pre-logging out your day to the best of your ability and control what you can control. Remember, you can use placeholders to put into your food tracking app, look at the menu ahead of time to help you do this. Number 2 is front load your protein earlier in the day. Having a high, heavy protein forward breakfast or meal from the get-go is going to help to regulate those blood sugar levels, help you with those cravings and the steady energy throughout the day, and really set the stage for your choices the rest of the day. Tip number 3 is very overrated or underrated? No, overrated. Stay hydrated. Make sure that you are drinking your water. This is really going to help with overall digestion, and it's going to help with whether your goal is fat loss or body recomposition or just energy levels throughout the day. So making sure that you're staying hydrated, incorporating water all throughout your day, aiming for about 80 to 100 ounces if you are exerting yourself or if you are sweating, getting more than that too. Tip number 4 is when you're out and about, even if you don't really have control over the options at hand, make sure that you are building your meals to the best of your ability around a protein source. So identify where the proteins are, make those the center of your plate, and then build your meals around that. If you're focusing on that protein, that's really going to help, again, with that blood sugar regulation, curbing those cravings, tapping into those hunger cues, and helping with that feeling of fullness. So you're not over consuming. Tip number 5, never skip meals. Make sure that you are at least having a little something so you're not starving going into whatever it is that you're going into, whether that's an event, a lunch, a dinner, whatever it is. Make sure that you are not skipping meals because that can mess with your blood sugar, which then can lead to overconsumption later in the day when you don't want to. Tip number 6 is don't forget that alcohol counts. Make sure that you are taking account of the number of drinks that you're having. You are accounting for those within your overall calories, because if you're not, that can pull you out of your deficit or put you into a surplus without you really even knowing it. And then opt for those lower calorie drinks whenever you have the option. This can really help to save some of those calories, but making sure that most of the food or most of the calories that you're consuming in that day are coming from those whole food sources. It's really going to help nutrient rich or build that nutrient density within you, but then really help with achieving your overall goals versus prioritizing alcohol over those. And then tip number 7, be mindful with these 2 things. Making sure that you're eating when you're hungry, tapping into those hunger cues, and pay attention, be mindful if you are multitasking or talking or socializing, and tap into just slow down. Try to slow down, try to tap into checking in with yourself whenever you can, and really make sure that you are being present if you are eating. And then that in turn will help you really check into those hunger cues. All right, my friends. Well, I hope these tips are very useful for you. Make sure to send these tips to a friend who might benefit. Share this episode. I love spreading this knowledge. It doesn't have to be complicated. It doesn't have to feel overwhelming. And if you're walking away from this episode, I hope you're walking away from this episode like, oh yeah, these are some easy tips that I can implement into my summer that don't feel overwhelming at all. Now, if you have a strict goal, again, yes, I do recommend tracking to the best of your ability, but you can still navigate these times being very mindful and taking these tips into account without even tracking. All right. So with that, let's just kick off summer, my friends. We are almost there. It is almost Memorial Day weekend by the time this comes out. And I hope you have a very fun summer ahead. You have some fun summer plans. All right, my friends, until next week, keep minding your wellness. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to follow along and catch all future episodes to help you look and feel like the best version of you. I'll see you in the next episode.